Welcome back to Lunch Break here at WSJ Live. I'm Simon Constable. He's a self-described former Mad Men executive. She was a freelance designer, but somehow Steve and Jane Darland found themselves in Monticello, New Mexico, which travel guides refer to as an Old West ghost town. And in between reviving the authentic adobe village, they've built a world-class balsamic vinegar brand from the ground up. Here with the story, Wall Street Journal Mansion reporter Katie McLaughlin, and she joins us from Los Angeles. Katie, thanks for being there. How did this couple decide they wanted to move to Monticello?
They had a background with the Southwest. They had both traveled there throughout their lives, and they knew of this town. His sister had once owned a home there. They also knew that they wanted to raise grapes, and the natural landscape in this area of New Mexico is good for that. So they ended up there. And
how did they get into the vinegar business? Because it's not the obvious thing one thinks of when one wants to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, they knew that they wanted in their retirement, although they're really not retired, they work a lot. They knew they wanted to raise grapes. They were from the Bay Area. The natural choice would be move to Napa, do a wine label, but he's a marketing expert. He had spent his career in top positions at J. Walter Thompson, and he felt that wine was oversold, that selling a small wine label would be too hard. They were friends with a chef named Paul Bertoli, who's an expert in balsamic vinegar production, and they talked to him, and they thought, well, this would be a unique product, and it would let them live out there doing their grapes.
Well, $150 for a 4.5 ounce bottle is really phenomenal. I'd love to taste some. I better guess I get the pennies together there. Talk about the historical features of their home and how they preserved them.
Right. Well, let me just tell you, I've tried the vinegar, and it is so fantastic. It's really like putting truffles or something on your food. So the price, it sort of can be worth it if you really like that stuff. She did research on traditional adobe construction. The structures that they worked from had been built in the mid-19th century and had very thick adobe walls. These can be 18 inches thick. They actually hired a family of adobe masons from northern Mexico to come up and build the adobe bricks, which literally they are building from materials from clay and mud they find on the property. Throughout the summer season, they dry them, and then they build in the fall. And the rooms are quite small. That is a feature of their home, but they built onto the original structures to make a larger home. So it really is an interesting combination of modern comfort. You don't need air conditioning there because of these very thick walls. The walls retain the coolness of the evening, and yet you have this kind of traditional look of the smaller rooms and adding on to them over the years.
Now, this all sounds like an adventure that we could all love having, but for one point in your story about them finding some aging dynamite in the guest house, or what became the guest house.
Right, these folks are tough. They're real adventurers, so they can put up with some of the trials along the way. When they were rebuilding, there was a medieval-looking padlock on one of the structures, the adobe structures. They had a worker cut it open, and they went in and saw these old crates that looked like they had been there since the 1950s. All of a sudden, a worker started saying, "Peligroso, peligroso," which means danger in Spanish. They went out of the room, and they realized that what they were looking at was a crate of dynamite that had been decaying for decades, making it highly unstable and very explosive, and they actually had to call the bomb squad to dump it and explode it on a remote part of their property.
Okay, interesting stuff. We appreciate your time. Katie McLaughlin of the Wall Street Journal. That was Mansions. That was great. It's got my mind far, far away.